Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me. First of all, I want to say I've just come from Delhi and there was a lot of smog over there. You know what's happening in the air quality, and I was just thinking, we have such big problems in the world and I just don't know how we're going to solve it. And then I was called by you guys to do this talk and I thought, no, 14-year-olds are organizing a TED talk. That's amazing, So I am very optimistic and hopeful about what is possible. And I just want to say thank you. I'm so impressed with AIS, all the core team and the volunteers and the parents involved in making this happen. So I really just wanted to say that before I start. The work I do is executive coaching. I work with senior and high potential managers to help them reach their full potential. And a lot of what I do is kind of sit with them and identify what are some of the beliefs and behaviors that are holding them back from really reaching their full potential. In most cases, what I find is that they hold on to a piece of management wisdom, and when you really put the magnifying glass on that piece of management wisdom, it turns out to be a myth, right? And so I'm going to just give a few illustrative examples of some of these management myths, and then take it to a broader point about how you think twice and get, a much broader perspective of things before you make a decision. So, a lot of these understandings that I got was actually not from the field of management or even psychology. It was from the area of quantum mechanics, right? That's what I studied when I was in college. And this statement really intrigued me. There are trivial truths and there are great truths. The opposite of a trivial truth is plainly false, and the opposite of a great truth is also true. And this was said by a gentleman called Niels Bohr. He was a Nobel Prize winning physicist in 1922. And it really intrigued me. I said, what does that mean? What does that mean? And as I started studying it, I started understanding it a little bit. The opposite of a trivial truth is plainly false. So if you said, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, if you say, well, no, 2 plus 2 is not equal to 4, that's clearly false. So if you said the capital of India is Delhi, the opposite of that, which is, say the capital of India is Mumbai, is clearly false. So the opposite of a trivial truth is clearly false. But the opposite of a great truth is also true. What does that mean? You could say something like, money makes the world go around, or you could say love makes the world go around. And there's some kind of validity to both, even though they seem to be saying the opposite sort of thing. And I started hunting for statements like this. Hunting for statements that were paradoxical in nature. So for example, leaders need to trust themselves. And you go, yeah, that makes sense. Leaders need to trust themselves. That makes sense. I agree with that. And you say, well, leaders need to question their assumptions. And you go, yeah, you know what? I agree with that. Leaders need to question their assumptions. But if you really look at it closely, they can't both be true. Because trusting yourself is the opposite of questioning your assumptions. Trusting your instinct, trusting your judgment is the opposite of questioning your assumptions. So they both can't be true, and yet in a way they both are. And I was trying to understand, well, how do I make sense of this? And I realized the language is not powerful enough to really encapsulate, the complexity of life itself. And so you're always going to get these paradoxes. And it's only when you really understand how they fit together that you really have wisdom in the subject, right? So let me give you an example of two very common management myths that I work with my clients to kind of overcome. First one, great managers make the right decisions, right? Our culture is suffused with examples of, prescient people who made great decisions. They knew the stock market was going to tank. They could see it coming. They knew exactly what the customer wanted, so they rolled out this fantastic project. You have stories and legends of people with great judgment who make the right decision. And this is something that a lot of managers believe, so that makes them careful. Okay, what is the right decision in this situation? What should I do? The D myth, right? So that seems to make sense. So what would be the opposite of this? The D myth is that great managers know there is no right decision, right? Again, there are right answers in 2 plus 2. There's a right answer, wrong answer. What's the capital of India? There's a right answer, wrong answer. But decisions like, okay, I've got one of my subordinates who's not performing, right? Now, what do I do? Should I sack him? Should I give him a warning? Should I coach him? Should I give him more responsibility? Should I find him a role that matches his work? Should I move him closer to his hometown? Clearly, the answer is not clear over here. It's not as simple as what is 2 plus 2. It's not clear, but I'm going to go further. It's not just that it's not clear what the right answer is. There is no right answer. And let me try and explain why, right? See, if you make a decision and you get the result you're looking for, you make a decision, you get the result you're looking for, does that mean you made the right decision? Not necessarily. You see, you don't know if the other decision that you could have made might have had an even better result. And if you make a decision and you do not get the result you want, it's a disaster. Does that mean you made the wrong decision? No, not necessarily, because the other decision might have been even worse. And you can never really know that. The only way you can isolate, the impact of that specific decision is you have one universe, you make one decision. You have another parallel universe, you make the other decision, everything else is the same, and then you see which one works out better. Only then can you say which one was better, which one was worse. But that option is never available to you. So the only thing that is really available to you is not what is the right decision, it's what is my decision. What are the principles and priorities and the values and things on the basis of which I'm going to make the decision. I don't know what's going to happen. You never will, right? But a lot of people start really obsessing about it. Now, there are two problems that happen when you think there is a right decision, right? Managers face two problems when they think there is one right decision. You see, if you think there is a right decision, and I know what the right decision is, then what happens is you stop listening to other people. You become arrogant, you become overconfident, you make hasty decisions because there is a right decision, and I know what it is, right? That's one management problem that people have. The other one is there is a right decision, and I don't know what it is. And quite often when people start their careers, they think, well, I can't say it, I might say something wrong, I'm not sure what the right answer is. They become tentative, they become confused, they become paralyzed because there is a right answer and I don't know what it is. They can't even say, this is what I feel, this is what I think, this is what I'm going to do, because what is the right answer? I don't know, right? And so you can either become overconfident or you can paralyze. And now one of the things that happens also if you think there's one right decision is you get filled with regret. Because you look back at decisions you made in the past and say, I should have done something different. As if there was a right thing to do and I did not do it, so I did something wrong, so I'm filled with regret. But you see, if you saw me looking at a video of myself learning to walk as a baby. So there's baby Kanishk and he's learning to walk and he's falling and he's getting up and he's falling. And I'm looking at that baby going, oh, you stupid baby. Are you a moron? You keep falling. What a moron that baby is, right? If you looked at me, you go, okay, Kanishk, you've really lost your mind. But you see, a lot of us do that when we say, I should have done that. Anytime you say, I should have, you're basically doing the same thing as abusing that baby version of yourself, because you're saying that the learning that I got from that experience, I should have had before the experience that led to that learning. That's impossible. And yet every time you say, I should have, that's what you're implying you should have. You never make the wrong decision in the past because you make the best choice available to you given what you know at that time, given your life experience. And if you keep looking back and saying, oh, I made that wrong decision, I should have done this, I should have done this, I should have done this, then when you're making a decision today, well, how can you trust yourself? Because I made so many wrong decisions, how can I know if this one is going to be right? And so another way of saying, I didn't make any wrong decisions. I made the decisions that time that I felt were best given what I knew, and I can do the same thing now, right? I'll make a decision and it'll work or it won't work, and I'll look at the result and I'll learn from that and I'll keep going. But if I say that there was a right decision, you're going to actually lose your confidence and be filled with regret, right? Now, let me give you an example of somebody who really understood this, right? It's Gujarat, so let's talk about Gandhi. He's one of my heroes. And when he was doing what he was doing at the time of the independence struggle, there were a lot of people who had opinions about what he was doing. The British will say he's an emotional blackmailer, all this fasting and stuff. It's not the way you do business. He's going to see our queen and dressed like this, etc. There will be some Hindus who will say he's against us. He's appeasing the Muslims. There'll be some Muslims who will say he's against us. He's not giving us a separate state. There'll be some Dalits who will say he's against us. He's not burning the Manusmriti like Ambedkar. There'll be capitalists who will say he's against us because he's thinking all this khadi, wadi, no big industries. That's not what's good for India. There'll be some nationalists who will say, yeah, dharna, varna, nothing is going to happen. You need guns and stuff to get rid of the British. His wife is saying, you're making me clean the toilet. His son says, you love everybody except me. Becomes an alcoholic. Everybody has got a point of view about what he's doing. Now, if he tries to please every single stakeholder, get everybody to agree with his decision that everybody says it's right, what's going to happen? Right? Nothing. So he's got to make a decision saying, okay, I understand all the different perspectives. I understand not everybody is going to say this is the right thing to do, and make a decision based on my values, my priorities, and I don't know what's going to happen. I listen, I hear, and then I make a decision. We'll see what happens, right? Now today also, if you look at the political leaders, whether you're a fan of Mr. Modi or Rahul Gandhi or Kejriwal, whoever you admire, somebody is out there criticizing every single thing about them. Face, family, education, policies, the way they speak, everything about them will be criticized. And the only way you can avoid people saying, no, you did something wrong, the only way you can avoid that is be invisible, right? Even if you don't do something, people will say he's not doing anything. So only by being insignificant, irrelevant, invisible, are you going to avoid being judged, right? So rather than say, okay, what is the right answer and live in a space of paralysis and confusion, you can make a decision. See, the thing about the word decide, right? The Latin word side, it means to kill, right? So genocide, homicide, suicide, etc. all means to kill something. When you decide something, what you're really saying is, I kill all the other options and I pick one, right? And people don't want to decide because they're afraid, if I pick one and I kill all the other options, what happens if this decision is not the right one? And so you have a choice. Either take the risk of succeeding or failing, etc., or you remain in confusion, right? You remain in confusion. And another word for confusion is basically saying, I refuse to make a decision, right? Now, uncertainty will always be there. You don't know what's going to happen once you make the decision. But confusion is completely optional, because confusion is saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do this, and then you'll see what happens. That uncertainty will happen. And so the question I have for you before I move to the next myth is, where in your life are you living with regret? Where are you saying, I should have done that, living in a world where you think there is a right answer, there was a right answer? And where are you kind of like pushing off a decision? You're confused, you're tentative, you're not sure what to do, as if there's a right answer, and therefore you're doubting yourself and says, this is my answer, right? That's the first question I have for you. Second myth, and it's kind of related to this. Second myth is, great managers never miss their targets, right? 100% record, I always achieve my targets, etc. It's something that really pervades the management culture, that if I miss a target, oh my God, it's the end of the world. So people try playing safe. They know they can do 100, they'll say, no, boss, I'll only do 90, no, you can do 100, no, I can only do 90, and then they'll try and exceed that safe target. So the opposite of this D-myth, right, is the only managers who meet all their targets are the ones who play safe. See, it's very easy for Sachin Tendulkar to score a century every single time. All he has to do is not play against Wasim Akram and Waqar Younis. He just has to play second division Kandali. It's very easy for him to succeed every single time, right? Now, are there times when Sachin Tendulkar gets out for a duck? Sure there are, right? But when he gets out, does he say, I'm a duck? Or am I Sachin Tendulkar? Because a lot of people do. See, if I said to you, you're all sitting on chairs, is that an accurate statement of reality? Probably. But if I said, you are the chairs, does that make sense? No, I've lost my mind. But that's what a lot of people do. Because they say, if I succeed, it means I'm a success. And if I fail, it means I'm a failure. And so they've lost the distinction between themselves and their results. It's like, I produce results, yes, I fail. That doesn't mean I am a failure. That's like saying I'm the chair. You've lost the distinction. And so the great champions really understand this, right? See, Roger Federer may have won 19 Grand Slam finals, the most that anybody has done in men's tennis, but he's also lost 10 Grand Slam finals, right? That's the second most anybody has lost. And you cannot win 19 Grand Slams unless you're willing to lose 10 Grand Slam finals, right? It doesn't work that way, otherwise you won't be playing safe. Now, if you think about it, Mr. Ambani, does every single business he's launched in his life every time succeed? Not necessarily. Bill Gates, every single launch of Windows, does that definitely succeed? Every single phone of Samsung that they launch, is that a success? Some of them blow up, right? But what happens is that when these guys fail, they do not say, I am a failure. They say, I failed. What do I need to do differently, right? And if you start thinking this way, that if I fail, it means I'm a failure, you're going to end up playing safe, for starters, and you will never really know how far you could have gone, what you could have achieved. Again, if you look at Gandhi, did he achieve all the objectives he set out? He wanted India to remain undivided. Did he succeed? He wanted to end the Hindu-Muslim conflict. Did he succeed? He wanted to end caste discrimination. Did he succeed? No. In many cases you would say he failed. Does that mean he's a failure? Not necessarily, because who you are is different from your results. It's very different. And when you see that, you'll be more willing to take risks rather than playing safe. Also, sometimes what happens, if you think, I am my result, if you don't produce the result, you say, no, that's not me. This happened, that happened. You blame somebody else for that result. You blame the circumstances. You say, I can't do it, etc. Instead of saying, what do I need to do, right? So this is another big myth that very successful managers really struggle with, because they've got such a track record of succeeding. They're like, I don't want to take on any challenges where I might fail. So here's the question I have for you guys to think about. Right? Where in your life are you playing safe? Where in your life are you saying, no, I don't want to do that, that's too risky, it might not work, and so you will never really know what you're fully capable of if you're not failing. So if you want to increase your success rate, you want to double your failure rate. And I have that question for you. Where in your life are you playing safe, right? I'm going to skip the next. So this is a broader point I'm making. I'm just giving 2 examples of myths that people have, and the opposite is also true. So it's not that the myth is wrong, it's true, and the opposite is also true. And the point I'm making is something a larger point, that the subject is more complex than it looks, right? And so I'm going to give you a model that you can bust any myth. Anytime somebody gives gyan, you can say, okay, let me really think about that and break it down and get a wider perspective of this. This is a model that's called reflective equilibrium. It was made by a philosopher called John Rawls, and it'll bust any myth. So here are the steps. Let me explain the steps first, and I'll give you an example of how to apply it. So, for example, the first one is when you hear a statement that sounds right, that sounds great, that sounds wise, okay? The first thing you want to do is ask yourself, in which situation would this statement be false? Where would the statement fail? The second thing you say is, think of a modified statement that would actually work in that situation, that would actually be true in this situation, right? Then you say, okay, where would this modified situation not be true? This statement would be false. And keep repeating that process until you feel like you've seen the bigger picture, and then finally make a decision. Let me give you an example of this, right? So say you hear somebody saying something like, oh, honesty is the best policy. And that sounds great. Wow, honesty is the best policy. Yeah, fantastic. I need to do that, right? But in which situation would that be false? If a terrorist was holding a gun and saying, where's your brother hiding? Would you always be honest? If your neighbor calls you up and says, oh, my son is getting married, please come for the wedding, would you say, I'm sorry, I really don't like your son that much, I'm not going to go to the wedding? Probably not. So which situation? So you can imagine, there's some situations where there are things that are more important than honesty, okay? But in general, I want to be honest with myself, maybe, right? But then you say, are there situations where even that modified statement would be false, where it makes sense to lie to myself? And you see, there are. Sometimes you might have such a traumatic event in your childhood that you're just not ready to face it. Okay, so let me lie to myself until I'm ready to face it. Maybe that's true, right? And so you keep going, and the phrase becomes more and complex, and then when you finally see the complexity, then you make a decision. Then you make a decision, right? And so if you follow this process, you'll see that the opposite of any truth is also true. And this is what I want to leave you with, right? The good managers know the right answer, and great managers know in which situation the right answer is wrong, right? And that's a process, that 5 steps to enlightenment. And here's the question I have for you guys to think about before I wrap this up, right? 1, what are your great truths? 3 truths that you're like, I really believe that. That's like my life is lived around that. 2, what would be the opposite of those great truths? Because they're also true. Now, I'm not saying if you say, family is the most important thing, the opposite of that is not necessarily family is unimportant, let me sell them to slavery, right? The opposite of that might be, it's important for me to spend time on myself. It might be that that's the opposite for you, right? So what are the opposite of those 3 great truths that you live your life by? And the third question is, if you could see that both of these are true, both of these perspectives are true, what will that open up in your life, right? I'll leave you with those questions. Thank you very much for inviting me. I hope I've thoroughly confused you, because you see, the aim of this talk was not to give clarity. It's not simple, it's more complex. And confusion really tells you that you're saying, I now appreciate the complexity, right? So anytime you're feeling confusion, don't resist it, don't fight it, because you'll then simplify and not see the complexity. Enjoy the confusion, because you're about to make a decision about your values when you realize it's more complex, and in that, you're defining yourselves. Thank you very much.